Welcome to the Businesstalk podcast. I am Deepak, your host for Roam India. Today we have the privilege of welcoming Dr. Yangjie Gu as our distinguished guest on the podcast. Dr. Yangjie is an associate professor of marketing at HEC Paris. She earned her PhD in marketing from the London Business School and previously served on the faculty at Tilburg University in the Netherlands. Professor Yangjie's research explores consumer behavior and decision making with a particular emphasis on post-choice satisfaction, preference formation, and hedonic adaptation. Her work has been published in leading marketing journals and its significance has been recognized with the prestigious Robert Ferber Award. At HEC Paris, Professor Yangjie teaches in the MBA and PhD programs where she is known for her engaging and research-driven approach to marketing education. In 2022, Poets and Cons named her among the 40 best under 40 MBA professors worldwide, highlighting her impact as both as a scholar and educator. In today's conversation, Dr. Yangjie Gu dwells into key insights from her research, understanding consumer choices beyond the purchase, post-decision satisfaction, preferences, and hedonic adaptation. Let's not keep you waiting. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yangjie Gu to the conversation. Professor Yangjie, we are deeply honored by your presence and grateful for your time with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, Deepak. It's my great pleasure, and thanks a lot for your nice introduction.
Thank you. Professor, let's start with the big picture. What inspired your interest in studying what happens after consumer make a purchase or a choice, rather than the decision-making process itself?
Thanks for the question. So I would say the inspiration of my research comes from my real life experience, my personal experiences. So I'm a perfectionist and a maximizer. I tended to spend a lot of time and energy and trying to just choose the best possible options from anything that in my daily life. It's tiring, yeah. Like most people, because I used to believe the fact that if I just made the right or the perfect choice, yeah, the happiness will follow naturally. But what I've come to realize, yeah, both in my own life and luckily, when I read a lot of consumer related research, is that I come to realize that actually psychologically, that's not always true. So actually, what makes often matters more for us is how we actually experience the choice after it's made, not how objectively good the decision quality is at that particular moment. So for me, actually, this can be a counterintuitive point, maybe for a lot of people as well, because we tend to usually assume that better decision would automatically lead to greater happiness. But real life, what we found time and time again, yeah, either in research as well or through anecdotal experiences, is that much of consumer well-being comes from what happens afterwards. That is the extent to which people feel happy or not, confident or not about decision, or sometimes maybe regretful or not whether a decision made. So that realization actually drives my motivation for my research and my research topics. One of my mainstream of my research is to study how post-decision experiences will shape consumer satisfaction and well-being beyond decision quality itself. So this has important implication for consumers because I believe feeling subjective better off often matters more than just being objectively better off. And also it matters as much for marketers, for example, yeah, who care, especially for those who care about repeated purchase, customer retention, or long-run healthy customer relationship with the company, right? So I believe that in many cases, improving how people experience their decision afterwards can be more effective than just simply helping consumer to make the best possible options. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hope that answer your questions. Yeah.
very inspiring, Professor. Thank you. Professor, post-choice satisfaction is a fascinating concept. In your research, what psychological factors have you found to most strongly influence how satisfied people feel after making a decision?
The factors, right? You're asking the psychological factors. Um, so I would say the most obvious factor, I would say, that impact people post-choice satisfaction will be related to the quality of the choice options, yeah, the objective quality of the product. So giving examples, imagine individual, they choose a fruit apple, not the phone apple, fruit apple, and inherently that guy actually prefer a sweet apple. But in for some reason, at the end, the chosen apple you pick actually to be sour. So in this case, the consumption experiences, the post-choice decision experiences, it's not good because you do not like sour apples. So in this case, the decision quality is hugely impacts the post-choice consumption experiences. And this is a situation where the quality of the objective actually it is diagnostic, and people have inherent preference towards the quality of such objective, such as the case of the apple. Yeah, the people can inherently judge the sweetness of the apple. But however, what we found in most of cases, the product is not diagnostic, and the preference is comparison based. So meaning that the preference of the product can be easily influenced or depends on the relative evaluations rather than the inherent quality. So giving an example in one research, so the researchers asked participants to evaluate two totally type different objects. Yeah, one is tend to be inherently more evaluable, such as the water, the temperature of water. So they asked participants to evaluate either the warm water or icy cold water. Yeah, so they ask participants to evaluate either in isolation or in comparisons, or we call joint or single evaluations in that term. On the other hand, the researcher asked participants to evaluate another totally different object, that is diamond. Yeah, so the size of diamond. So either a bigger diamond or a smaller diamond, either in isolation or in joint evaluations. So what they find, yeah, the research found is for the water, yeah, regardless it's in a single or joint evaluations, the responses, the preference towards the warmer water is constant, regardless the consumption mode, evaluation mode. Whereas in the case of a diamond, so actually when you ask people to compare in the joint evaluation, people tend to favor a bigger diamond. But when ask people to evaluate in isolation, so actually the preference across two group of people tend to be comparable. So what does this finding tell us, right? So this finding tell us that when the objective is not diagnostic, less diagnostic, as in the case of diamond, the temperature of the water, the preference tend to be shaped in the joint evaluation through comparison, that is comparison made. So in that case, when the product is not diagnostic and can be easily malleable, so in this particular case, the psychological factor can play a crucial role in impacting consumers' post-choice satisfaction. So in my research, one central factor I found in my research is the extent to which people mentally reopening the decisions. So when the choice feels unfinished, people keep comparing the option to the chosen options with the option that they didn't choose, engage in what we so-called counterfactual thinking. So it is try to compare what if I choose differently, what can lead to the different options, right? So this sense of reopening the decision would often trigger some negative emotional responses, and usually can spoil satisfaction and consumption experiences. And this is a typical explanation, psychological explanations that can explain what we usually call, people say the choice overload effect phenomenon, or decision fatigue phenomenon. That is, people typically face an abundance of choice in the marketplace and have trouble to make choices. Yeah. Because of that, because people keep their decision open. So this is the first factor. And the second important factor which shape post-choice satisfaction is how people would emotionally frame their decision outcome, which is regardless of the objective quality of the decision outcome. So the very same objective or choice can feel highly rewarding, or at the same time can be deeply disappointing, depending on whether people focus on what they gain or what they lost. So when a decision is directly towards losses, for example, or missed opportunity, so in this case, satisfaction tends to decrease. Even again, the objectively results is remain the same. It's the same choice. So interestingly, we show in our research that simply being aware that a negative outcome is possible, but eventually avoided. So we so-called favorable uncertainty resolution. So that favorable uncertainty resolution can enhance positive feelings. So this awareness creates what we so-called upward counterfactual thinking. That is comparing the outcome to an inferior alternative outcome. And this would amplify satisfaction. So in other words, when an outcome does not need to be perfect to feel good, it can be better precisely just because things could have turned out worse. If you think about our marriage, about any constant relationship, if we take it for granted, the positive feelings, then maybe people tend to the happiness tend to fade. But if you should not take it for granted, have this positive digest, always assuming things could have been worse. Think about the worst case scenario. So in this case, maybe how we just the mental conscious what happened, will play a crucial role in how we evaluate our decisions afterwards. So in a nutshell, overall, I believe the post-choice satisfaction is less about making the perfect decision, but more about how the decision is mentally or emotionally framed and lived afterwards.
We often assume that getting what we want will make us happy. Yet, your work on hedonic adaptation suggests otherwise. Could you explain what hedonic adaptation is and why it matters in consumer experiences?
Thanks for the question. So if we talk about hedonic adaptation, is a pretty established psychological phenomenon in the literature of psychology or behavioral science. So hedonic adaptation is the idea that we emotionally, our emotional reaction to either positive or negative experiences are not permanently stable, but tend to fade over time. So, for example, something we really want, for example, maybe buying a new iPhone model, getting a promotion, or taking a long vacation. So this kind of acquisition or new exciting episodes often make us very excited, happy at the very beginning. Yeah. But you might notice that feeling does not last as long as we would expect. Yeah. You can imagine if you go to a holiday, for example, sometimes the first few days you can feel excited. Yeah, you're lying along the beach reading, but afterwards you might feel it's a bit boring. Yeah, so the happiness is tend to fade over time. So, so this is the one example to show that over time we get used to this positive feeling, and then we tend to become this positive feeling can become to the new norm, the new normal. So the same mechanism might apply to negative experiences. For example, in classic experiments, the researchers look into happiness of two different group of individuals. Yeah, so the first group of individual, they recently had an accident and unfortunately became handicapped. While the other group of individuals, conversely, they were so lucky they got a lottery and become super rich. Yeah. But if you look at the objective happiness of these two group of people, you can obviously think that the unfortunate handicapped can feel less happy compared to those who are the lottery winners. But what they found surprisingly is, of course, at the very beginning, we can see a huge difference, yeah, in the initial happiness. Lucky ones are much happier than the unlucky ones. But over time, the happiness converge, meaning the happiness positive one drops and the negative one comes back. It converges. So what this tells us, the finding is that the intensity of emotion responses naturally weaken with the repeated exposures. So in other ways, what feels very intense at the very beginning, yeah, can be the joy of winning lottery or the distress after accident, would gradually fade as people get used to it. Um, so this phenomenon of hedonic adaptation matters a lot in consumer experiences, because we constantly or consistently overestimate how long a desirable outcome would make us happy. Yeah, this is what we so-called well-known phenomenon also in psychology literature called affective forecasting biases, or sometimes we call it durability biases. That is, we tend to focus heavily on getting what we want, but we pay less attention on how quickly we would adapt to it. So bear in mind that this pattern of hedonic adaptation can be very risky. Yeah, because our expectations adjust really fast. So, which means that what once felt exceptionally, acquiring, taking a vacation, can quickly become normal. And then what we do is tend to systematically, we start comparing everything to this new baseline. As we adapt, we raise the bar again and start to looking for the next new challenge and next new improvement. So in a way that, we never have these up and downs, never feels happy in the long run because we adapt. So in a nutshell, for consumers, long happiness depends less on the initial impacts of experiences, more on how it would develop or unfold over time. And this has huge implication for market, because for them, it implies that it is essential to design experiences that should sustain positive feeling over time. This can be just as important as delivering a great product upfront.
Professor, technology increasingly personalizes experiences from recommendations to AI-driven curation. Do you think this personalization reduces or amplifies hedonic adaptation?
Thanks for the question. I would say personalization would do both. It can either reduce or accelerate hedonic adaptations. Depending on how we design, everything is complicated. It depends. So On one hand, I believe personalization can make experiences feel more relevant and effortless, which boosts short-term satisfaction. Yeah, for example, think about streaming platform that recommend exactly the same show. No, sorry, exactly the show, not necessarily the same, the similar type of same genre show that you like, right? Or shopping platform app that offer the product that would perfectly match your taste. It send you some recommendations. In this scenario, maybe at the first sight, it looks like everything feels easier, faster, and more just for you, for the customer, right? But the dangerous side is that when experience become too predictable, people tend to adapt very quickly based on the experiences and the theory I mentioned earlier, right? So imagine if Netflix always know exactly what you want to watch, or Spotify always play exactly the same genre of music that would fit your taste. In this case, the predictability increases, and which actually reduce the prices that you would have. The novelty would decreases. So in that sense, extreme personalization can actually accelerate hedonic adaptation. Yeah. So meaning that the better system gets at predicting us, the faster emotional payoff would actually decline. So even though we argue that experience is objectively optimized, yeah, we done a great job. So this is one situation can be dangerous, can fasten the hedonic adaptation. But on the other hand, however, so if personalization is used carefully, thoroughly, yeah, it can actually slow down adaptation. For example, yeah, instead of delivering same perfectly predicted experience over time, every time, yeah. So for example, introduce some variations of similar consumption experiences, or the moment of wow, surprise me, exploration effect. This can actually keep experiences feeling fresh, yeah, novel. So for example, a streaming platform could think of occasionally recommended something that outside consumers' usual preferences, right? So this is actually some of the market has been doing, which would create a sense of discovery. Yeah. Music app, another example, might mix familiar favorites with some unexpected tracks. Yeah, you mix together in this case, rather than always give you some predictable, favorable genre of the song. So in retail setting, for example, brand can rotate product display, offer limited edition, or offer highlight some new uses for familiar product, for example. Yeah, trying to reposition the product as we see in marketing term. Even for example, in the travel or hospitality industry, for example, some small and unexpected touch, such as a surprise upgrade or some personalized touch, a message for the customer, can somehow inspire some surprises and novelty to renew our attention to positive experiences that help us not to just fade and help them come back to the normal. And then can help you prolong the enjoyment. So the key is to know how to keep a balance, long story short. Yeah. So for the personalization works the best when it supports relevance. But at the same time, I believe it should not eliminate uncertainty and novelty. And from a behavior perspective, the goal for me, in my opinion, is not just to optimize every moment, but to design the experiences that would make consumer to engage over time.
Professor, your research has earned the Robert Ferber Award, recognizing its impact on marketing science. Could you share a key findings from that work that businesses or policymakers can apply immediately, especially in settings like online shopping, streaming platforms, or subscription services, where alternatives remain highly visible. Many consumers experience choice overload today. What can businesses do through design or experiment management to help consumers maintain satisfaction beyond the initial purchase?
So this is you have a lot of questions, but I think the question converged to the similar observations. So maybe let me start with the choice closure finding. So what we find in this research is show that the post-choice satisfaction is heavily depending on whether people feel that decision is mentally closed or complete after decision we made. So this is what we call choice closure. So to explain the more specifically, when we make decisions, decisions tend to have two different stages. The first stage, we call it decision phase, where consumer compare all the choice alternatives. The goal is to find the best possible option that match consumers' preferences. Well, after making the choice from the decision phase, people move on to the second phase called consumption phase, where in theory, people should just evaluate the decision outcome in isolations. But as I mentioned earlier, people have this general tendency of going back to the decision process, of keeping the decision more open, right? So what we introduced, this concept is called choice closure, in the sense that we trying to define that the extent to which people focus on the chosen option by stop thinking foregone option. I know it's hard, right? In theory, people should do it, but it's really hard. So in our research, we show that trust closure can be triggered through different ways. So one of interesting way is through these physical motions. The physical can be physical triggers. So for example, what we found that in a restaurant, after consumers choose their choice option from the fact that consumer physically close the menu versus not, can trigger off the decision sense of closure. Now I've done my choice, I have to enjoy my choices. Another example what we find in our study is we asked participants to evaluate chocolate that is presented in a tray. The tray is somehow covered by a lid. The fact that the participant opened the lid, making a choice, taking out the chocolate, and the fact of closing the lid subconsciously make people realize that they've made a decision. Now I have to move on. So this is some type of specific example of how we can trigger choice closure, make people feel close in the choice. So of course, in our real life, there can be a lot of examples for that. So what does this choice closure mean? So what this does, it does actually is it increases satisfaction, consumption experience of satisfaction, reduce all this regretful thinking, even though objectively, again, the outcome staying exactly the same. So I believe this insight has a really direct implication for business. So one practical step that brand can take is to help consumers to feel a sense of closure around their choices. But of course, if you think about that, in reality, it tends to be opposite. For example, in the online shopping, right? Certain platform, after you make a choice, maybe you finish all the transaction, you have a confirmation page, but sometimes they might just present you again the option that you unselected. Or maybe they cannot wait to tell you something else to give you recommendation, might like this or that. That it helps you, doesn't help. Actually make you to reopen your decision-making process. And what we found in our research actually is tend to be the opposite. So we show that when people are constantly reminded of alternative, they keep preparing, and then it can tend to erode their satisfaction. So this can be, I mean, it sounds intuitive, but if you do not make people aware of that, it can be counterintuitive. It can be in the marketplace often underestimated, especially in today's choice-rich environment. We have so many choices, right? So a company might just invest a lot of enormous effort in help people, consumers to decide. As in the example, personalization, as we discussed early on. But maybe we tend to overlook the effort in managing the post-choice period. But again, what we show that this is actually the period of time, the phase where satisfaction is the most fragile, yeah, and where a firm can actually have the greatest impact. So here we suggest a simple but powerful principle, that is to separate choice from consumption. These two stages has to be separated. When this stage mixed or blurred together, consumer tend to get stuck in the decision mode, and this has some detrimental impact. And practically speaking, so rather than just immediately pushing consumer to the next options or upgrades, it's really essential for market to realize we need to stabilize the experience of consumer after decisions made and allow people to fully engage with what they have chosen before exposed to new alternatives. Yeah. How to do it? Some simple things can help in addition to the physical acts that I just discussed in my research. For example, we can simply confirm the choice without showing foregone option, making consumer to focus attention on what have done, and take a moment holding back. Do not suggest new alternative too quickly, too soon. The message here is simple. Simply, you should tell consumers, now you made the most challenging part, that is to choose. It is the right moment for you to take one step back, to enjoy what you have chosen and enjoy the experiences.
Professor, from a behavioral perspective, what can consumers do to make choices that lead to more enduring satisfaction rather than fleeting happiness?
Right. So I think this question is super good questions. So from a behavior perspective, I think for consumer, from consumer perspective, one thing they can do is trying to override the existing lay belief. Stop thinking, stop assuming that making the best option can automatically lead to long-lasting happiness. Maybe you can have the quick excitement at the very beginning, but tend to adapt. So we often invest a lot of energy in optimizing, But again, we need to tell ourselves, is it worth it or not? Compare the cost and benefit. So here I suggest a better alternative is to focus less on choosing per se, but focus more on experiences better. It focus less on, let's say, the truth better and experience better, but the experience better. So this means what? This means slowing down, being pleasant, present, and actually engaging with the experience rather than immediately think about what's the next, right? So without prompting by the market, maybe they also think, so what's the next? I have to achieve a promotion. So what's the next promotion I want to achieve? No, take a moment to savoring your past experiences. So related to that, another useful strategy is to manage expectations, anticipate, recognize in advance that the excitement will naturally fade. That can actually help people to avoid disappointment later on. To mild a little bit, in a way that we want to avoid the quick boost of excitement at the very beginning. So when we expect adaptation, we are less likely to feel something wrong when initial excitement wears off. So another way I think is similar to what I said early on is to somehow actively savor the positive moments, revisiting what we enjoy, or being mindful about some small positive benefits, right? Like we saw that we called it positive digest. So there are classic literature that look at two group of people. One is called maximizer. The other, that is who wants always the best options, like me, right? The other one is called satisfied, meaning that they have setting up a threshold of satisfactory options, and when the choice above the threshold that is good enough, they stop searching and then just settle on the good enough options. So the research trying to look at the decision quality and the long-term happiness of these two group of people. So what they find actually is, not surprisingly, objectively, maximizer is doing better, but yeah, subjectively, satisfizer, they are doing better. So we tend to be more satisfied when we shift our focus from maximizing to being content or being happy. Yeah. So we need to keep in mind that long-lasting happiness does not come from making a perfect choice, but from learning how to live well with the choices that we make.
Professor, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. Finally, looking ahead, what open questions or emerging trends in consumer psychology excite you most about the future of understanding post-decision experiences?
So this is actually a very tough question. Yeah, so I've been doing research, and that is the most tough for our research. What's the next? What is the most exciting ones? So I would maybe suggest two different directions. So one direction maybe for the future, at least for me, that excites me, it's about how to understand how the social context, yeah, the social context shape post-decision experiences. So the current tendency is more and more people tend to evaluate their choices not in isolation, but in a collective environment, thanks to the development of internet, right? So thanks to the rise of social media, people discuss more, they share more about their common experiences, etc. So the social context. So how others react to our decisions can sometimes strongly influence how satisfied we feel afterwards. So another maybe interesting direction is the role of identity and self-concept after choice and are made. So many choice today about anything, the product, a specific product object, or lifestyle, or career, for example. Yeah. So are deeply somehow grounded to, in a sense that how consumers think what they are and what they stand for. Yeah, this is what we call in psychology the signaling. Yeah. So this is especially the case in the context of the green consumption. For example, people tend to choose a certain product, a green product, to stand for the social or individual self-concept to signal to others, right? So here, maybe the one key open question is how post-decision experiences either reinforce that identity or undermine it over time. So identity does not only guide the choices, but maybe we can think about whether they can be shaped over time by what happened after choice is made. Yeah, I hope that answers your questions.
Yes, Professor. Professor Yangjie, thank you for joining us today and sharing your fascinating insights into how consumers think, feel, and adapt after making choices. Your research truly deepens our understanding of the emotional side of decision making, an area that's as relevant to businesses as it is ready to everyday life. It's been a pleasure hearing about your work on post-choice satisfaction, preferences, and hedonic adaptation, and how these ideas can help organizations create lasting value for their customers. We appreciate your time and thoughtful perspectiveness. Thank you so much once again.
Well, thanks again for inviting me. It was my great pleasure. I hope the answers are helpful for you.